A few years ago now, I released a video looking at every single Bankai in Bleach. We moved systematically through the source material, chronicling each new Bankai reveal on an arc-by-arc basis, splitting them into half and full reveals where appropriate. It was certainly an endeavour, but it was also a lot of fun. Since then, however, apparently insatiable, you guys have repeatedly asked for a similar video compiling every Shikai release, and well, I aim to please. Obviously, it was slightly more of an undertaking this time, as there are considerably more Shikai in Bleach than there are Bankai, though perhaps there actually isn't quite as much of a gulf as you might expect between the two, but regardless, here it is. Now, the formula is going to be exactly the same as that previous video on Bankai. We're going to move through Bleach in chronological order, starting with the Agent of the Shinigami Arc, and we'll only be counting every first instance a Shikai is released. However, there are some caveats. As with the Bankai video, some Shikai are only half revealed on their initial appearance, meaning we simply didn't get the full picture either of what they are or what they can do. For example, Ukitake releases his Shikai in the Soul Society arc in his battle against Yamamoto. While that absolutely counts as his first Shikai release the first time we see it, it is only a half reveal. We see the design, we hear the name, but we have absolutely no idea what it can do until it's revealed a second time, this time far into the Arrancar Arc. At that point, the Shikai will reappear on the list, this time counted as a full reveal. If you haven't done already, I definitely implore you to go and check out that Bankai video I did a couple of years ago, just to get some idea of the basic formula, though bear in mind it is quite old now. But I'll tell you right now, it is going to get a little messy where some of these Shikai are concerned, and when it comes to it, I'll be using my own judgment regarding some of these reveals. Now, I'm pretty certain I've got every Shikai listed here, but make sure to let me know in the comments if I've missed any at all, and I'm sure you will. For now, though, take note, the source material is all we're going to be looking at today. No anime filler, no light novels. Maybe we'll do that at some point in the future, but for the sake of my own sanity, right now we're just going to be looking at the original story. There are almost 50 unique Shikai revealed in Bleach as it is, so let's get this show on the road. Here we go. And so, we're kicking things off with the Agent of the Shinigami Arc, and yes, there are a couple of Shikai reveals to be found here as we're slowly introduced to the world of the Shinigami for the first time. First up then is Renji Obarai's Zabimaru, released with the command Howl in chapter 54. Determined to show Ichigo just how clueless he really is, Renji releases his serrated fang-like whip and seriously injures our main character. In my opinion, this is a full reveal right off the bat. There really isn't too much to Renji's Zabimaru ultimately, and here we get to see its ferocity on display in full. Next, in chapter 65, we get to see Kisuke Urahara's Benehime revealed with the command Awaken. This is a surprisingly understated Shikai reveal considering how major a character Kisuke actually is, but it's very cool all the same. And again, I think this is another full reveal. Kisuke demonstrates the power of Benehime in a battle against Ichigo, even utilising one of its abilities, the Blood Mist Shield, to defend himself from a massive energy blast. Sure, we perhaps don't get a complete grasp of the full concept of this Zanpakuto just yet, but ultimately I think it's enough. And finally, in chapter 67, at the end of his training, Ichigo unleashes Zangetsu, the first of 3 versions of his Shikai. While this isn't his true Shikai, I think it still counts, as we were unaware of that fact until much later in the story. Now, this is a tough one though. Is it a full reveal, or only half? Like Zabimaru before it, there isn't much to Zangetsu at the end of the day, but can we really count any reveal without Getsuga Tensho to be a full one? Ichigo does launch an involuntary energy blast at Kisuke, but the attack isn't defined until his battle with Renji, and isn't actually named until his duel with Byakuya. Regardless, I think this can be classified as a full reveal. Even without all of the details, it's pretty clear what this Zanpakuto is all about. And so after that trio of Shikai reveals, we arrive now at the Soul Society arc, which is, unsurprisingly, where we find the bulk of new Shikai being shown off. And kicking things off, we have Gin Ichimaru's Shinzo, revealed in chapter 75 with the command, "Shoot him dead," as he prevents Ichigo and the others from entering the Seirete, giving us our first real look at the power of a captain. This is, comfortably, another full reveal. Gin's Shikai extends rapidly, springing forwards like a snake, before retracting again, and that's really about it. There's not too much to say about the sword except it's deadly enough to decimate Jidanbo and send the giant flying. Chapter 87 brings us Ikaku Madarame's Shikai Hozukimaru, released with the command Extend. Used in battle against Ichigo, Ikaku demonstrates the full capabilities of his weapon, wielding it in a way that feels a lot more inventive than it does in future appearances, as he splits the spear apart in order to get the drop on our main character. Meaning that once again, this is a full reveal. These melee-type Zanpakuto don't have too many secrets, thankfully. Speaking of secrets though, up next in this slew of Shikai reveals, we have Yumachika Ayasagawa's Fuji Kujaku released with the command Bloom. Yumachika's Shikai is one of the simplest yet, transforming his katana into a fan of sickle blades. And so as he fights Ganju with his Shikai, this is a full reveal again, of this version of his Shikai anyway. Considering they are two distinct releases essentially, I'm going to give this one a pass. I'm content with leaving this one as a full reveal. As for the true form of Yumachika's weapon, well, we'll get to that. A little bit later on, Uryu battles the 7th Division member Jirobo Ikanzaka, who wields his Shikai Sunzaki Garasu in chapter 91. Releasing his Shikai with the command Spread Your Wings, Jirobo is one of the few non-recurring Shinigami characters to actually reveal their Shikai. While Sunzaki Garasu is immediately destroyed essentially by Uryu's arrows, honestly, I think this is another full reveal. I think we see enough. Once again, as a melee-type Zanpakuto, it seems pretty likely to me that we saw all that Jirobo Shikai could do, turning the katana into numerous spinning blades that zip through the air. I do like the way he activates it though. Pressing his hand down upon the blade's tip to transform it is pretty cool. With Aizen's supposed death, a grief-stricken Hinamori Momo activates her Shikai Tobiyume with the command Snap 10 chapters later in chapter 101, as she tries to kill Gin, whom she suspects of her captain's murder. With the sword transformed into a tree branch-like design, Hinamori generates and flings a ball of explosive flame, showing us everything her Zanpakuto can do right then and there, and so giving us yet another full reveal. In that same chapter, however, Izuru Kira attempts to defend his captain, releasing his own Shikai Wabisuke with the command Raise Your Head. While we do get to see Wabisuke's unusual design, however, this is only a half reveal. What the Shikai can actually do remains a mystery for now, as Izuru is quickly arrested. Next up, the main antagonist of the arc, Byakuya Kuchiki, unleashes his Shikai against Ganju in chapter 116. This is a bit of a weird one, and it's kind of going to come down to your own discretion as to what kind of a reveal you think this is. Though Byakuya calls out Senbon Sakura, he does so without his release command, instead using Dai, which is used in such a way numerous times, not just here, that I think Kubo originally wanted Dai to be the release command for the Zanpakuto before changing his mind. But I think personally this counts as a half reveal. While we do see the blade transform into petals before our eyes, Ganju just kind of erupts in a shower of blood. To me, this is clearly meant to be a tease of what Byakuya can do. Put yourself in the shoes of someone reading Bleach for the first time. It's absolutely meant to be a startling moment of shock and confusion. What exactly just happened here? A few chapters later, in chapter 122, Mayuri Kurotsuchi releases his Shikai Ashisogi Jizo with the command RIP in battle against Uryu, his blade transforming in a sinister purple smoke, taking on the appearance of the face of a three-pronged golden Jizo head. While the effect of the Zanpakuto doesn't become apparent immediately, this is a full reveal nonetheless. Ashisogi Jizo's powers of paralysis are quickly realised when Uryu discovers he can't move at all. However, once a bedraggled Uryu has defeated Mayuri, he begins to make his way to the Senzai-Kyu, only to be intercepted by Kaname Tosen in chapter 126. Now, this is yet another weird one. I think this is a full reveal, but honestly I'm not really sure. Tosen releases his Zanpakuto Suzumushi with the command Cry and instantly knocks Uryu out by producing a ringing sound from his blade. However, this is only one form of Tosen's Shikai, the non-violent takedown option. I think for now this is a full reveal, and he'll simply have another full reveal later on too. In chapter 132, Toshiro Hitsugaya releases his Shikai Hyorin Maru for the first time with the command Sit Upon the Frosted Heavens. Conjuring his gigantic dragon of ice in battle against Gin, this is another full reveal. Unlike its Bankai, Hyorin Maru doesn't really have that many special abilities to speak of, and the essence of the Zanpakuto is clear from the off. Its main power is the manipulation of the weather and the creation of tempestuous ice and water, and we see that on full display here as Hitsugaya floods the area with his power in his rage. Next up is another slightly odd one. Sajin Komamura's Shikai Tenken is very simple and is seen only a couple of times throughout the Soul Society arc. Its first appearance is here, in chapter 139, when Komamura springs an enormous sword on Kenpachi, signalling the start of their battle. What's weird about this, though, is that Komamura doesn't actually call out the name of his Shikai when he brings the massive blade down upon Kenpachi. That's perfectly fine, Komamura knows Bankai after all, so he can do that, but the fact that he doesn't even mention his Zanpakuto's name at all is a little weird. He only mentions it very briefly a bit later on in passing, when he's surprised that Kenpachi survived. So, I think this is a full reveal even without the release command of Raw, and with the weirdness surrounding the Shikai's name. Immediately after this, we get the second of Tosen's two releases. This time it's Suzumushi Nishiki Benehiko. His Zanpakuto vibrating rapidly, Tosen generates a multitude of blades which then rain down from the sky upon Kenpachi. Where the last non-violent release reflected Tosen's dear friend, this one is considerably bloodier in execution, reflecting Tosen's so-called justice, and is another full reveal. In chapter 147, Yumichika decides to unveil his true Shikai in his short battle against Hisagi, yet this is a half reveal in the truest sense. This is purely a tease on Kubo's part, as Yumichika begins to change his Shikai, revealing a tangled mess of colourful vines to a shocked Hisagi. Later we discover through unknown means that Hisagi was totally sapped of his power, but this really isn't a proper reveal at all. In fact, that won't come for quite some time yet. Anyway, moving on, as Ichigo rescues Rukia from her impending execution, stopping the Sokyoku and destroying the scaffold, the Gotei 13 mobilises to bring him down. 3 vice captains then activate their Shikai at the same time in chapter 152. First up is Isane Kotetsu, who releases her Zanpakuto Itegumo with the command Run. This is a really tricky one to me, and I'm tempted to say that this is only a half reveal, even though we never see this Shikai again. We see what form her Shikai takes here. 2 additional, shorter swords sprout from the guard of her Zanpakuto upon activation, creating a 3-pronged fan of blades. Yet the name, which means frozen snow, and the fact that Isane comes from the more Kido-oriented 4th Division definitely makes me suspect that she doesn't have a melee-type Zanpakuto, and this Shikai has an ability that we simply haven't seen yet. The next Vice Captain to release his Zanpakuto is Chojuro Sasakibe, activating his Shikai Gonryomaru with the command Bite, transforming his katana into an elegant rapier. Initially, I would have thought that this was everything we would see from Sasakibe's weapon. However, the 1000-Year Blood War arc revealed that Gonryomaru's Bankai is a lightning type, and so I can't help but wonder if the Shikai had more to show like Isane's before it. After all, it is a cardinal rule that Shikai and Bankai are at least somehow related. Therefore, I think I have to say that this is a half reveal too. Thankfully, the third and final of these Shikai reveals is by far the simplest. Morechio Omaida unleashes his Shikai Gagetsuburi with the command Crush, transforming his katana into a massive spiked ball and chain. Though Gagetsuburi is immediately demolished by Ichigo, we know from future appearances that it doesn't have any special abilities, and so this is a full reveal right here. Moving away from Vice Captains for now, up next we have Captain Retsu Unohana's Minazuki, which is revealed in chapter 154. Taking the form of a giant emerald green manta ray, Minazuki is definitely an unusual Shikai. And what's even weirder is that we never learn what Minazuki's release command actually is. That being said, I do ultimately think the command is the least important aspect overall. We see this Shikai fully in action as Unohana uses it to house and heal several of the injured vice captains, and then it appears again towards the end of the arc too. So I'm pretty happy saying this is a full reveal here in chapter 154, it's just missing that release command. In the very next chapter 155, we are treated to one of the most incredible Shikai of them all. Shigekuni Genryusai Yamamoto unleashes Ryujin Jaka with the command Reduce All Creation to Ash. As the head captain takes a powerful step forward, his Zanpakuto is completely coated in a divine flame that threatens to swallow up the entire battlefield around him. Lifting his sword above his head, Yamamoto creates an arc of flame, the searing heat trailing from the Zanpakuto like a stream. And to be honest, this is another full reveal. It's a little similar to Hyorin Maru in that sense. While Ryujin Jaka does have other abilities even in Shikai, its signature power in Shikai, the essence of the blade, is simply to drench the sword in a calamitous flame, and I mean that's exactly what we're seeing here. We're on a bit of a roll here as the following chapter 156 brings us another pair of new Shikai reveals. Up first is Jushiro Ukitake's Sogyo no Kotowari, with the command All waves become my shield, all thunder become my sword, as he faces down his father figure. Although Ukitake's Shikai is revealed here, taking the form of a pair of katana connected by a rope from which several talismans hang, we have to go back to that example I used at the start of this video. We have absolutely no idea what its ability is yet, meaning this is only a half reveal. And the same is true for Kyoraku Shunsui and his Shikai Katen Kyokotsu, released with the command When the flower wind rages, the flower god roars. When the wind of heaven rages, the god of the underworld sneers. Activating his Zanpakuto alongside his friend, the two of them trapped within the swirling vortex of Ryujin Jaka's power, Kyoraku Shikai is revealed to be a pair of enormous black scimitars, each with a beautifully curved blade and opulent red tassel dangling from the hilt. My personal favourite Zanpakuto. But, like Ukitake's before him, we don't learn what Kyoraku Shikai can do, so it's another half reveal for now. And what do you know, another Shikai is revealed in the following chapter. In chapter 157, Soifon captures Yoruichi during their battle and releases her Shikai Suzumebachi with the command Sting all enemies to death. Soifon's terrifying two-hit kill Shikai plays a large role in the ensuing duel with her former tutor, and we get to see its signature ability of Nigeki Kesatsu in action as she lands a few hits on Yoruichi, generating her iconic Homonka mark. While Yoruichi may not fall prey to the two steps kill ability, you know enough about what it can do for this to count as another full reveal. Up next, we have possibly the weirdest Shikai reveal on the entire list. Tetsuzaimon Iba's still to this day unnamed Shikai makes its first appearance in chapter 160, and it's about as unceremonious as you might expect. His oddly shaped sword is planted in the ground as he and Ikkaku chat about the current situation before they prepare to fight again. The name has never been revealed, the command has never been revealed, the ability has never been revealed. It's just very strange and barely even a half reveal as far as I'm concerned. Returning once again to Byakuya Kuchiki in chapter 160 now, during his final legendary battle with Ichigo, he activates his Shikai Senbon Zakura, this time with the correct command of Scatter. And I feel like we really see what it's all about here. The blade disappears, and in its place, we witness a spiraling column of glassy pink petals drifting through the air before they zero in on Ichigo, looking to inflict the same damage upon him that they did on Ganju before, meaning we at last have Senbon Zakura's full reveal. Come chapter 169, once the bulk of the fighting is over, a conspiracy is unfolding. Hitsugaya leaves his vice captain Rangiku Matsumoto to deal with Izuru, who once again releases his Zanpakuto Wabisuke. Only this time we actually learn what Wabisuke's ability is, making this a full reveal of the Shikai. It doubles the weight of anything it strikes again and again, leaving the victim to eventually bow their head in penance. Unfortunately for Izuru, his opponent has the perfect counter to his power. Speaking of which, in that very same chapter, Matsumoto releases her Shikai Heineko with the command Growl in order to overcome Izuru's Wabisuke. Matsumoto's Shikai is fairly simple. The blade vanishes, turning to ash, which she can control freely, giving us another full reveal as the penultimate Shikai reveal of this arc. And finally, getting to the end of the Soul Society arc, we have the final Shikai reveal of the arc, Sosuke Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu, which is activated with the command Shatter. Although the Shinigami thought they already knew what Aizen's Shikai could do, in reality it had all been a lie. The true power of Kyoka Suigetsu is that of complete hypnosis, giving Aizen total control over all 5 senses of those under his spell. And that includes just about every high-ranking officer of the Gotei 13. This is a full reveal of Aizen's incredible power. It's an ability so godly that it doesn't need anything extraneous. Aizen's entire scheme was made possible by the all-encompassing illusory powers of his Shikai. And so that's it at last for the new Shikai reveals of the Soul Society arc. It's absolutely the arc with the highest number of them, unsurprisingly, but we've still got plenty of big names to come, plus a couple of Shikai that need to be fully explained. So let's move on to the Arrancar Arc. And we're starting things off with a slightly weird one, because how else should it be done? Hanataro Yamada's Shikai Hisagamaru, activated with the release command Fulfill, is only actually seen within the source material during the chapter Omake sketches, Kubo added as little bonuses at the end of each chapter for the volume releases. That being said, it's still in the source material, so it counts as far as I'm concerned. And although we see Hisagumaru's ability, the power to heal people with its slashes until a small gauge fills all the way up, at which point it transforms into a scalpel and unleashes a massive blast of collected energy across a number of chapters, it really begins in chapter 193, and is ultimately a full reveal, as strange as that is. As the battle with the Arrancar truly gets underway, Rukia at long last reveals her Shikai now that her powers have fully returned to her. In chapter 201, she activates Sode no Shirayuki with the command Dance, calling her most beautiful snow-white Zanpakuto into action. As D-Roy attempts to escape her icy domain by disappearing into the sky, Rukia kills him immediately, unveiling the first technique of her Shikai, Tsukishiro. Thanks to this fairly extensive first look at her Shikai, I'm content with saying this is a full reveal. Now, it could be argued that the true ability of Sode no Shirayuki isn't revealed until her battle with Asnot much later on. But considering it's still the same Zanpakuto and the same Shikai at the end of the day, I think this remains the true reveal. Next, we have another odd one. During his training with the Vizards, Ichigo faces off against a number of them, including Kensei Muguruma in chapter 219. Kensei is pretty famous for getting straight to the point, and that's evidenced here too, as he's immediately using his Shikai Tachikaze as soon as he enters the battle. There's no pomp and circumstance to be had here. We skip right past the name and the command. Instead, Kensei Shikai takes the form of a small combat knife, which he uses to battle Ichigo's holified form. We actually get to see one of Tachikaze's abilities here too, as Kensei uses it to generate an explosive blast. Ultimately though, there's no way this can be anything other than a half reveal. Honestly, if you're not paying attention, it's easy to miss he's even in Shikai at all. We only get one new Shikai reveal during the Waco Mundo arc, which I guess makes sense as the arc is dominated by the Arrancar, and even this one is unusual in the way it's presented to us. As Rukia takes on the 9th Espada, she's shocked to discover it's none other than her former mentor, Kaien Shiba. Of course, in reality, it's Aranjero Ararueri masquerading as Kaien, but regardless, we still get to see Kaien's Shikai Nejibana as he releases it in chapter 265, with the command Rage through the seas and the heavens. Nejibana takes the form of a huge silver and blue trident that can conjure crushing, churning waves through dance-like motions. This is definitely another full reveal, and a cool way for Kubo to showcase a deceased character's power. For the next entry, we are quickly going back to Kensei in chapter -104 of the Turn Back the Pendulum mini-arc, where we get the full reveal of his Shikai Tachikaze with the command Blow It Away, as he activates his Shikai in order to kill a giant hollow that's terrorizing some children of the Rukongai. Here we see that Tachikaze has the ability to create explosions along the lines where it slashes, obliterating the hollow in a violent blast. As we begin the fake Karakura Town arc, Yumichika steps up once more. This time in chapter 321 we get the long-awaited full reveal of his true Shikai Ruidiroku Jaku. This is no longer just a tease. Instead, Yumichika fully activates his Zanpakuto with the command Split and Deviate, using the glittering vines that burst out of his sword's guard to drain Charlotte Kulhorn of his power completely and win the fight. This Shikai is quite the visual treat, to be honest, and it's cool that Kubo followed up on almost 200 chapters worth of teasing. As the character's popularity began to skyrocket, Shuhei Hisagi at last activated his Shikai Kazushini with the command Reap during chapter 324. Kazushini becomes a dual-bladed kusarigama of sorts, featuring a pair of cruel-looking scythes attached to a chain that Hisagi can then wield in a wild and unpredictable fashion. This is a full reveal of his Shikai, at least as far as the source material is concerned. Of course, the light novel Can't Fear Your Own World reveals that Kazushini's true power lies in the connecting chain, and that said chain represents life itself, capable of pulling Hisagi back together again even after sustaining a fatal wound. But like I said, we're only considering the source material today. Up next, we have probably the most troublesome Shikai reveal on this list, and it's ironic because it's my favourite. Kyoraku Shinsui returns with his Katen Kyokotsu in chapter 362 to battle Stark, revealing several of his Shikai's abilities, specifically Bushogama and Taka Oni. And so you might be thinking, well, that's enough for a full reveal, surely. But the answer, in my opinion at least, is actually no. Even though Kyoraku has drip-fed us a couple of his Shikai's games, the reality is, coming at this from someone who has never read the series before, we still have no idea at all what his Shikai can actually do at this point. Hell, just by looking at Bushogama, you might be forgiven for thinking that Katen Kyokotsu is a wind-type Zanpakuto, but of course that isn't true. However, I felt this was a significant enough step up from the original reveal to count this as another half reveal, but I'd love your input on this one in particular. In my opinion, it makes sense for Kyoraku to purposefully obfuscate the true nature of his Shikai for as long as he can, after all. The next one, though, is thankfully much simpler. Ukitake appears at the end of that same chapter to bail Kyoraku out after the captain faces Stark's overbearing power, utilising his own Shikai Sogyo no Kotowari at last. Unlike Kyoraku's Katen Kyokotsu, Ukitake's Sogyo no Kotowari is quite straightforward, and this constitutes a full reveal. Ukitake's Shikai can absorb attacks, adjust their speed and trajectory, and then launch them back at his opponent, as Stark deduces when Ukitake fires his Sero back at him several times. It's a nasty power, but not particularly complicated, and so this is a full reveal. As the Vizard enter the fray, Love is first up, releasing his Shikai in chapter 372. Love's Shikai Tengumaru is activated with the command Slam, and transforms his katana into a gigantic black cudgel, lined with spikes on all sides. This is another full reveal. We get to see Love not only use his Shikai to physically battle Stark, but he also showcases its firepower too, with a massive rippling blast of flame thanks to its ability Hifuki no Kodzuchi. In the following chapter 373, Rose also activates his Shikai Kinshada with the command Play. His Zanpakuto unfurls, becoming a lengthy golden whip with a flower at the end. This is another full reveal. Rose utilises his whip to eliminate a number of Stark's wolves, ripping through them with ease before unveiling an ability of his own. Kinshada Sonata number 11 Izayoi Bara, which he activates by tapping the segments of the whip like piano keys, detonating an explosion at the top that also helps to show Rose's command over music. Finally, after two half-reveals, Kyoraku Shinsui returns once more in chapter 374 to at last reveal what his Shikai Katen Kyokotsu is all about. With Stark on the ropes after a sneak attack straight through the back, Kyoraku explains that his Zanpakuto has the power to make children's games a reality, as he reveals several more, Kage Oni and Iro Oni, using them to bring down the Primera Espada. Considering this is perhaps the trickiest, most mysterious Zanpakuto of the lot, it makes sense that it took this long for us to learn the truth. But here we are at last, with a full reveal for Katen Kyokotsu. In the next chapter 375, that makes 4 chapters featuring new Shikai reveals in a row now, by the way, Harabel takes on 3 enemies at once. Lisa Yadamaru releases her Shikai first, spinning her blade in her hand to perform the activation. Lisa's Shikai Haguro Tonbo takes the form of a giant polearm with the command Smash, and seems to be a fairly simple one on the surface. Therefore, I feel like this is a full reveal, though it's a bit odd. Lisa's Zanpakuto has never really been classified as anything but a pretty basic melee type, but it's clear it has some additional swordplay themed abilities. Much later in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, it's seen launching what look like a barrage of sword stabs at her enemy. But I think, regardless, this is a full reveal anyway. The essence of the Shikai is very much on show here, and what those other abilities could be have never really been solidified. In the same chapter, Hiyori activates her Zanpakuto in battle against Harabel as well, releasing Kubikiri Orochi with the command Butcher Them. This is another fairly simple Shikai, transforming Hiyori's katana into a large, serrated knife, and thus is a full reveal. A little later, the de facto leader of the Vizard, Shinji Hirako, duels his former vice-captain Aizen and releases his Shikai at last, though there is a little bit of teasing involved. In chapter 385, Shinji reveals the name and release command of his Zanpakuto, Sakanade, activated with the command Collapse. However, the actual Shikai itself isn't seen until chapter 387, 2 chapters later, when Shinji reveals both its form and ability against Aizen. Therefore, I've decided to say the Shikai is revealed in chapter 387, and this constitutes another full reveal. Sakanade's power to completely invert what you see is used to good effect against Aizen, with Shinji landing the first ever hit on the main villain as a result. However, Shinji's Shikai isn't the last we get in the Arrancar arc. There's a surprise Shikai reveal in the endgame of the Deicide sub-arc. Kuremadani Zenosuke, the Shinigami in charge of the Karakura jurisdiction, comes up against Aizen and activates his Shikai Tsuchi Namazu with the command Good Morning, turning his katana into a circular-shaped blade, complete with flowing blue ribbons from which bells are attached to the ends. By driving Tsuchi Namazu into the ground, Kuremadani is capable of rupturing it, sending huge shards of earth into the air before they then close in on his target, imprisoning them in a cage. It's noted that the nature of this Zanpakuto seems to make it the perfect tool for running away from battle. Regardless, as unexpected as this is a full reveal nonetheless. And that's it for new Shikai reveals in the Arrancar Arc. There's quite a few. Not as many as the Soul Society arc, no, but still a healthy amount. The number will only really decrease from here, but that makes sense. There are fewer and fewer characters with Shikai left to reveal, after all. However, there's only one new Shikai reveal to be found in the Lost Agent arc. Once Ichigo regains his Shinigami powers, he acquires the second version of Zangetsu, and this is a full reveal as we see him use Getsuga Tensho to dominate Ginjo in their brief battle. This is my favourite version of Zangetsu, and although it's still not technically the true Zangetsu, once again, we didn't know that at the time. But without further ado then, it's time to leap into the 1000-Year Blood War arc and see what new Shikai await us there. As the war with the Quincy's begins, Chapter 494 brings us several new Shikai from some lower-seated Shinigami. As Izuru is blasted by Basby, his fellow 3rd Division officers attempt to activate their Shikai in response. The first is Taketsu Nagori, who activates his Shikai Mogaribu with the command Blow. Mogaribu takes the form of a wide cleaver lined with several holes, though of course we have no idea what it can do. Up next in the same chapter is Asuka Katakura, who activates his Shikai Katakage with the command Counteract, transforming his blade into what looks like a two-pronged fork of some kind. Finally, the 3rd seat of the division, Riku Togakushi, activates his Zanpakuto as well, releasing his Shikai Shunjin with the command Coil Upward. Shunjin takes the form of a scythe whose blade is on the outside portion of the weapon. Unfortunately, all 3 of these Shikai are, of course, only half reveals. Each of these officers is brutally killed by Basby almost as soon as they release their Zanpakuto, with Gori and Asuka having their heads slammed into the tiles beneath before Riku is decapitated by a well-placed burner finger. A fair bit later, during the Everything But the Rain flashback in chapter 531, Isshin Shiba releases his Zanpakuto at long last, long after revealing its name to Ichigo during the Deicide arc. The young captain battles the strange Hollow and Shinigami hybrid experiment White and activates Engetsu with the command Burn, wreathing his blade and the tassels hanging from the end of the hilt in flame. Again, although somewhat short-lived, this is another full reveal. Isshin is able to use Engetsu to duel White, even going so far as to hint at the Zanpakuto's true power. It seems to use Isshin's blood to fuel itself, as Isshin spits his blood onto the blade to massively increase the ferocity of the flames. Just before the second Quincy invasion begins, Ichigo learns the truth about his origins, and at long last, he releases the true Zangetsu after having it forged in Oetsu's divine furnace. In chapter 542, Ichigo stands tall after pulling his gleaming black blades from the fire. The dual blades represent the harmony and balance of his soul now that he knows where his power comes from. The longer blade represents the fusion of his Shinigami and Hollow powers inherited from his father, while the smaller blade represents the Quincy powers inherited from his mother. However, this is only a half reveal. Ichigo wouldn't go on to actively use the true Zangetsu until a little later. In chapter 571, Yachiru Kusajishi reveals her peculiar Shikai. With no release command, Yachiru activates Sanpo Kenju, calling forth 2 strange creatures to her side, Lumpy and Bony. Both of these creatures wield their own weapons, and the ability of Yachiru's so-called Shikai is that when she swings her sword, the 2 creatures swing theirs at the same time and in the same place. It's a triple threat attack designed to never miss, striking anyone who thinks they've avoided it. I guess this is a full reveal, only this isn't really a Shikai at all, but instead a manifestation of power. Perhaps then it shouldn't have been on the list. Chapter 577 sees the arrival of one of the most anticipated Shikai of the entire series. As the Stern Ritter Gremmy conjures an enormous meteor to destroy the entire battlefield, Kenpachi Zaraki leaps into the air and releases his Zanpakuto, Nozarashi, with the command Drink. Transforming what was originally thought to be his constant release Zanpakuto, Kenpachi obliterates the meteor with a single swing of his now enormous, jagged blade, the design of which is finished off with an ornate cap and flourishing green tassel. This is another full reveal. Although a real spectacle and one people had been waiting forever to see, there isn't much else to Nozarashi ultimately. After a short wait, Ichigo returns from his training in the Royal Palace and at last uses his true Zangetsu in battle. Although he displays the usual Getsuga Tensho ability, Ichigo also commands incredible control over his power now, eking out just a tiny bit of his strength to conjure a blast strong enough to block Candace's Galvano Javelin. Eventually, Ichigo even uses both blades at once to launch a massive cross-shaped blast called Getsuga Jujisho that has enough force to burrow into the heavens themselves. Finally, seeing Ichigo using both blades in harmony like this means this is a full reveal, and the last time we'll have Ichigo on this list. For now, anyway. Alright, we're nearing the end of the new Shikai reveals of the 1000-Year Blood War arc now, as Kurinji Tenjiro activates his Zanpakuto Kinpika in chapter 588 with the command Heavenly Flash. Removing the sheath on his oar-like Zanpakuto to reveal a squat, wide blade at the top, Tenjiro leaps into the air as his blade glows with a brilliant light. And then it's never seen again. Now, originally this would have obviously been a half reveal, but thanks to the anime we know that there is actually basically nothing else to show. We've kind of seen it all already. Kinpika's main power is that it simply illuminates itself for a second, temporarily blinding Tenjiro's enemy with a godly gleam. This is almost the opposite issue we will have with the next Shikai on the list, but for now, Kinpika is, I think, surprisingly a full reveal. Up next we have the penultimate Shikai reveal of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Shutara Senjumaru's Shigarami, only we don't know that it's called that. In fact, like I said, Senjumaru Shikai has the total opposite problem to Tenjiro's before it, in that the anime reveals a whole lot more to this Shikai than we originally knew. But we are looking at these Shikai reveals based on how they are portrayed in the source material, and so this is clearly a half reveal, and barely one at that. Senjumaru wields her Shikai against Nyanzol, where it takes the form of a small sewing needle from which flows a thread of reishi. This is her Shikai as we know it, but the original chapter 598 never tells you that. In fact, we don't find out Shigarami's name, release command, or even its ability in the source material, leaving us with truthfully very little to go on. Thankfully then, the anime really did wonders for Senjumaru overall. In chapter 607, Ichibei Hyosobe releases his Zanpakuto Ichimonji with the command Paint It Black, transforming his calligraphy brush into a blade. This is absolutely a full reveal to end the arc on. Ichibei wields his Shikai against Yhwach in the ultimate battle for the fate of the Royal Palace, displaying its ability to erase names by splashing ink all over the place. Anything that is covered by Ichimonji's black ink loses its name. It's a monstrously powerful Shikai, one of, if not the most powerful in the entire series, and a fittingly divine place to leave the 1000-Year Blood War arc behind. And that's it for the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Quite a few new Shikai reveals, though overall a pretty mixed bag, I'd say, compared to the arcs that came before. We're almost done, but there's actually one last Shikai reveal to look at, and it's found in the Hell chapter. Appearing in the chapter New Breathes from Hell, the new vice captain of the 7th Division, Atao Rindo, unleashes his Shikai against the Hell Hollows in Karakura Town on the night of Ukitake's Konsou Reisai ceremony. Now, Atao is mute, and therefore can't call out his Zanpakuto's release command. So instead, he inscribes the phrase "give birth" onto the blade itself, and that activates his Shikai. His Zanpakuto becomes a string of paper talismans, from which he can then say the name of a creature in place of an actual Zanpakuto's name to summon said creature. For example, in the chapter, Atao signs the word for hawk, and the talismans of his Shikai then transform into a flock of hawks. And so this is, in my opinion, a full reveal. While I'm sure Atao can turn his Shikai into a variety of animals, this gives us a great look at what it can do in one go. But that's it for our extensive, comprehensive list of every single Shikai revealed within the source material. I'm really hoping I haven't missed one now that we've reached the end of the video, but do please let me know in the comments if I have. Let me know which is your favourite Shikai in the series, and which arc do you think did it best for Shikai reveals. I think it's probably got to be the Soul Society arc, I would imagine, and like I said earlier, that makes a lot of sense to me, but maybe your opinion differs. I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I want to end the video by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon. I really do appreciate each and every one of you so very much. If you like what I do here on YouTube and you want to take the support from me another step further, you can do just that to get your name in the credits like this, and to get every video I release absolutely ad-free. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.